Welcome to the Football Coaches Show from Missouri Baptist University. I'm Harry Schrader. Head coach Jason Buryanek is here. And you guys, it's homecoming week and Hall of Fame week and all kinds of things going on here at Missouri Baptist. Just talk a little bit about that. How does homecoming week change things for the guys or for the coaching staff?
Just makes our week very busy. I know for the coaches, I'm sure the players feel the same way, but we really preach to the players that there's a lot of activities, and really all those activities are for the alumni and for other students to get involved and to get people back on campus, which is all exciting stuff going on. But for them, they've got to really focus on this Saturday and being ready for 2 o'clock. Now, as coaches, our week gets filled up with events that we've got to go to or things that are going on throughout the week that takes away a little bit from game planning. But you definitely find your time and got to make up for it.
Biggest takeaway from last week's game, you guys score 20 points but lose the football game. Just talk a little bit about that game, your takeaways from that particular game.
Well, the takeaway is that we had opportunity to win that game, and we knew that going in, and we felt that we had a very comparable football team to what they had, and I said it to the team that morning I felt like that we were maybe a little bit better when you look at kind of compare every position head to head, and that we might have had a slight edge, but I said we're only better if we execute better, and we just didn't do that. We weren't sharp. There were times where we executed really well on both sides of the ball. There were times where we really didn't execute well at all on both sides of the ball. So trying to figure out what that was. I know there was guys flooding in my office on Monday, kind of, Coach, what happened? And everybody was searching for answers, and that's good. That's part of that maturity process, and I think a lot of that is maturity, still having some young players. How do we handle success when we get it? How do we handle going into a game where maybe we are better than that team when you compare? Because, these guys are smart. They watch film and they say, well, I think I can cover that guy. Well, the other thing is those guys are competitors too, and they want to battle as well. So, there's some little things there that we've got to learn how to handle, and we've spent a lot of time this week talking about it. But at the end of the day, we know that we let one slip. At the end of the day, I think everybody felt the same way about it, and that's encouraging. So now like I told them, I said that the best part is that we've got another week to make up for it. If that was the last game of the year, you got 9 months to think and you're a little bit sick to your stomach. But we can put that behind us. Next game's 5 days away. We're ready to go.
One of the things you take away is Malik Ross has one of those big Malik Ross weeks and becomes the player of the week in the league. We've been kind of waiting for him to kind of explode this year. I mean, he's had a fine year, but all of a sudden he looked more like Malik Ross.
Yeah, he keeps getting better and better, and I'm really happy for him that he was Conference Defensive Player of the Week, because there's been games in the past where he had extraordinary stats and didn't get it because maybe somebody else had a really good game and they won, and I was surprised that he won that, in fact, because typically they like to vote for guys that their team wins. But he's a great player. He comes to work every day. He's very, very football smart. He understands how to attack an offensive lineman, and he's obviously a big force on our defensive line. I think the biggest thing that's starting to help him now is the other guys on the line are playing at a high level as well. Chandler Anderson had a huge day as well. Dominic Aguirre, Michael Luna, Simi Skips, those guys are they can't just double team Malik anymore. They've got to account for those guys as well, and I think that in general that makes him more successful.
You've played 4 different quarterbacks. You've started 3 different quarterbacks. In spite of that, you've already thrown for more yards this year than any year that you guys have been here at Missouri Baptist. But still trying to find that piece, and I know Billy is your number one guy, but you guys really need some consistency despite the fact that you've had some good production at the quarterback position.
Yeah, the production has been there. I think you said the magic word is the consistency. Obviously, Billy had a really good game against Bethel, and then we weren't really that good against Siena Heights. Gunner had a phenomenal game against Taylor, and obviously was a big part of our win there and Conference Player of the Week, and then followed it up with a less than spectacular performance against Belleville. And the thing that I challenge those guys, all the quarterbacks this week, is that they've got to really just start putting themselves into the game plan a little bit more, coming in, watching a little bit more film. I think really what happens is sometimes they try to do too much. And the thing that Billy did best in the Bethel game was he managed the game. He didn't make the big mistake. He didn't, he took what the defense gave him and let it run. And I think last week there was a little bit of, I've got to do too much. Billy back in the lineup for the first time in a couple weeks, coming off of an injury, wanting to prove that, probably in his mind, wanting to prove that he is the starter, that this is his team. And I know he was very upset after that game because he knew that he missed some reads, missed some throws that really could have helped us. But it's not a lack of desire. It's just a lack of trying to understand what it is that they're capable of doing and just playing within themselves.
When you look at St. Ambrose, the Bees, that's an interesting name. The when you look at them, they're a pretty good offensive team. They can run the ball well. The quarterback throws it all over the place. How do you guys defend them on Saturday?
Well, that's been something that's been keeping me up at night for sure. Still working on the game plan a little bit. There's some adjustments that we're going to have to make in the secondary, just minor things to handle them because they are very talented. We think probably outside of St. Francis, Indiana, this is probably the best overall receiving core that we've seen. Probably, behind Marion. Obviously, Marion had some very talented guys, but across the board, none of these guys are, they're not the big physical guy that Krishan Hogan is, or that maybe St. Francis, Indiana has, but every single one of those guys is good route runners. They've got really good hands. They're intelligent. They do a lot of read routes where if they're even with a defensive back, they're going to go vertical, but if the guy's trying to take away the vertical, he's going to stop, and they're excellent about it. And they've got a lot of guys that are juniors and seniors in that receiving corps. They've got a senior quarterback, so they've played many years together. They've got that timing down. So it'll pose a big challenge to us in the secondary, especially. I think it's going to be important that our defensive line gets pressure on the quarterback and tries to rush some of those throws. But we've got to rise to the occasion a little bit on defense and in the secondary, something that we really didn't handle very well last week.
Patrick Smith, their quarterback, has thrown for about 300 yards a game. I mean, he's a weapon.
Yeah, no, he's a great player. He's 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds. He's as good running the ball as anybody that we've seen. He's a big physical guy. He's not a guy that's going to want to, make the big run, but when he has to use his legs, he will. And so we've got to do a good job keeping him in the pocket. He does a great job. He's a really accurate passer. So he can throw the deep ball. He can throw the intermediate ball. So it's a challenge for us. We've got to be very solid. We've got to communicate well in our coverages, make sure that we're all playing the same coverage. And that didn't happen a few times in the Olivet game. There was some miscommunication where one guy would make a call and he'd be playing one coverage, but not everybody was on the same page. So we've got to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're executing.
Austin Schultz becomes the second player ever to go for 100 yards in a game at Missouri Baptist. And yet Antorio was out there a little bit as well. So you got him back, got a little bit of a nice 1-2 punch going.
Yeah, and this week we'll get Kendall back, which will be huge because Kendall gives us that speed factor. Antoria and Austin are great running backs. They're physical. They ran extremely hard last week and really the week before as well. Austin did. So getting Kendall back will help, but that'll give us really three versatile backs. We'll get Isaiah King back, which will help our receiving corps as well. So we're starting to get some guys healthy. I think we were banged up at the wrong time last week. I definitely think that played a little bit of a role in maybe why we weren't quite as sharp. Isaiah's been a real security blanket at times, taking pressure off of Kalen Petty and some of those other guys. And with him not out there, I think they were able to focus in a little bit more in the past game, made it a little bit more difficult for Billy in some areas. So we'll see. I think we can open it up a little bit offensively this week.
I know that St. Ambrose is a good football team. But you guys are still looking for kind of some of those game changers on the defensive side, meaning the guy that's going to strip a ball, the guy that's going to get a pick. I mean, that's still kind of you. I think your defense has been much better, and yet you're still looking for those flipping the field plays.
Yeah, the way our defense is we put a lot of pressure on our corners, and they've answered the challenge at times. And again, I think it's a consistency factor. We have a lot of youth out there at the corner position. We've got to continue to recruit guys that we can lean heavily on, because we do play a lot of man coverage. We do like to bring pressure, and that is something that has been beneficial to us. But at the same token, we have a tendency to give up big plays at times, and some of that just comes asking guys to really play that man-to-man all the time. So, we're going to have to give them a little bit more help, and we're going to have to use our coverages a little bit more than maybe what we have in the past. But all in all, I think we've just got to line up and execute and compete. And those guys on the defense, they've got to understand that they are good football players, that they can make the big play. They've shown it time and time again. They just got to have that confidence every game going in.
It's homecoming. The Spartans hosting the Bees. Kevin Paulus and I will have the game for you. And listen, it's going to be a terrific time. But this is a big conference game. It's one of those crossover games again. But you guys are 500 in the league, and it's an opportunity still to climb the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. And St. Ambrose, they're 3-3 overall, and so I think they're a good football team. I think once again we match up fairly well on paper, but it's going to come down to executing. They have the experience factor. That's where the scales tip a little bit in their favor. But one thing that we've talked about is that there's things that teams set out every year to do, and one of them is to win home games. The second one is to win your homecoming. So that is all in front of us. We haven't won a home game since going back to Haskell. So I know the guys are hungry. They're working extremely hard this week. They want nothing more than to bounce back and do it in front of the home fans. So looking forward to Saturday and watching them execute.
You can watch it right here on the Spartan Digital Network. Thanks for watching. You've been watching the Missouri Baptist University Football Coaches Show.